Well, it's finally here. After such a long time, I have reached the famed Devil May Cry 3. According to some, one of the best games ever made. I have to be honest, part of the reason that I wanted to cover the original trilogy is because I heard such high praise of DMC3, and another one was revenge for my childhood. Back in my kid years, I got stuck on the Agni and Ruda boss fights, so this time I wanted to go all the way with this one. So with that in mind, let's get right on to the review.
Wanna know the name? Devil May Cry.
This, my friends, is Devil May Cry 3, specifically the HD remake of the special edition. Why is this important? You see, Devil May Cry 3 was hard as fuck, and it was re-released as Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition with extra content and retweaked difficulty. When porting over to modern consoles, this edition was the chosen one. This included a new playable character and Bloody Palace mode. This time around, there is a much bigger emphasis on the plot, and I love it. One of the big problems I had with the previous titles was the lack of a strong, cohesive narrative, and Devil May Cry 3 delivers. As per usual, you play as Dante, but unlike the other games, he is young and very cocky, which is the beginning of the character everyone knows nowadays. Despite being the third installment, canonically it's the first game of the plot. Having not even named his shop yet, Dante gets approached by a mysterious person who claims to have an invitation from his brother Virgil, and so Dante goes off to stop his twin brother from opening the gates of hell. Plot-wise, the game is surprisingly rich, with plenty of cutscenes that deliver both action and comedy in droves. So as for the emotional stuff, well, that fell a bit flat for me, but I do acknowledge maybe that's more to do with me than the writing itself. Nevertheless, I was not disappointed like I was with previous titles, and it was a major step up for me. However, I do think halfway through the game really loses steam. I believe a shorter game would have made everything flow a lot better. I don't think the retreading of environments or the rematch with bosses was required or enjoyable, and I'm going to lay it all out there. That is the reason why I don't think Devil May Cry 3 is as incredible as people make it out to be. I always heard everyone complain about Devil May Cry 4 and how you essentially go through the entire game a second time with Dante when you reach the halfway point, but I don't see much of a difference between that and this game's version of it. Sure, some stuff is different, but not enough for it to get an okay from me. And something else that really was starting to test my nerves later on was the puzzles. No puzzle was very hard or anything like that, but I don't know, they just weren't doing it for me. I especially hate the one where you have to change the layouts by repeatedly beating the thing with the crystals on the wall. It also made all the enemies respawn, which only made it more infuriating. But I'm tired of beating this game down like a bully. After all, this is still an excellent game, so let me do the opposite and praise it for a little bit. The combat is such a huge improvement that I don't think I could ever go back to the old games anymore. It has a much bigger emphasis on style. Not only does it look better, but it also feels smoother, letting you switch between two different weapons and guns with a press of a button. It just feels so nice to combo your way through every enemy. I can't really confirm this, but I'm pretty sure the game is also faster than its predecessors. They brought back the purchase of upgrades and extra moves, and they introduced a choice between a couple fighting styles which can be chosen and upgraded with use from the shop. These are what make Devil May Cry 3 stand out. They completely changed the way you play the game, and although they might have situations where they would be more useful, once I found a favorite, I couldn't play without it anymore. Really made me wish they worked like in Devil May Cry 4 and 5, where they can be switched on the fly with the D-pad. You start off with 4, Trickster, Swordmaster, Gunslinger, and Royal Guard. Later on you unlock 2 more that can't be upgraded, which are Quicksilver and Doppelganger. Let's start with my favorite style, Trickster. This, in a simplified way, gives Dante a speed and movement edge, allowing you to dodge attacks easier, and if upgraded, even instant transmission yourself to enemies. I just couldn't play without this style. I just found the regular dodge roll to not be enough for me, but then again, I always prefer a more agile type of movement and combat, so it makes sense that I would latch onto it so much. Swordmaster gives you extra moves for your combos with Devil Arms, which is just a fancy word for your main weapons, by the way. It turns the style button into an extra melee button that creates different combos. Gunslinger is the counterpart to Swordmaster, but for your guns, making your shots stronger and allowing you to shoot multiple enemies at once. Royal Guard is probably the most complicated style. It essentially works as a block button. However, if timed correctly, it completely negates all damage and fills up 3 little orbs next to your health. Once they fill up, they can be used to unleash a devastating move which also also needs to be properly timed for maximum efficiency. If you're interested in this style, I recommend some YouTube tutorials. I don't have the time or the will to master the style, but it does look like some good fun if used properly. Quicksilver is the first of two styles that can be obtained later on. It allows you to stop time, but it drains the Devil Trigger gauge considerably fast. The second one is Doppelganger, which creates a copy of Dante that mimics his movements. It also consumes Devil Trigger gauge, but unlike Quicksilver, it doesn't let you use DT while using it. A really cool thing the game never tells you is that if you have a second controller, you can actually control the copy with it by pressing start after it activates. This time around, the enemies don't look like ass anymore, thank fuck for that. And the bosses actually look cool. Unlike the ones in Devil May Cry 2, they look like they were made by taking a Rorschach test and drawing whatever they saw on it. The bosses are also better quality overall to both previous games, and since there's 13 of them, let's not beat around the bush and let's start discussing them. First of all, Hell Vanguard, a simple boss that serves as a perfect game introduction. Not too hard, not too easy. Later on it just becomes a regular enemy either way, so you can tell what kind of enemy it is. Cerberus is a three-headed dog covered in ice. You have to destroy the ice around it before you can cause damage to it. Cerberus looks really cool and it's a decent challenge. This is the first fight that rewards you with a new weapon, turning Cerberus into a ice three-headed nunchuck thingy, which is fun, but I barely ever used it. Next up, Gigapede, the first miss for me. All you have to do is jump on top of its back while it passes back and forth occasionally, throwing some pathetic offense at you. Jester is up next, which has 3 fights in total, 2 of them being optional. I skipped one by mistake. The mandatory one is okay, nothing special, but it is fun from a narrative perspective, but the optional one is so freaking annoying. After the halfway point of his health, Jester summons a second ball and becomes much more complicated to hurt. I wasn't really having fun with it. Agni and Rudra feel a bit unfair since they both fight you at the same time, but they give you enough of a breather if you know how to control them to not let it be terrible. In fact, I actually like this fight quite a bit for its chaotic but overall fair execution. What you want to do is keep one of them outside of your view and he will usually not attack you. Keep in mind to wail on both, as once one dies the second one gets a power boost. They give you my favorite weapon aside from the Rebellion, which is a double fire and wind swords that were my go-to secondary devil arm. Beating these fuckers was a nice moment of redemption from young me, as they were the bosses where I quit on way back then. Leviathan is up next. Technically an area and a boss, it feels like the living cave of Devil May Cry 1, but much bigger. And just like the living cave, the insides of Leviathan were a highlight looks-wise for me. There's just something about impossible places like the inside of a beast or an ant's colony that always fascinates me in video games. The boss itself is nothing really special, just a bunch of lesser demons constantly spawning to stop you from smacking one of the 2 weak spots, until the main part opens in the middle where the real boss health is. Nevan is a fun fight with a lot of flair and silliness to it. She throws bats, lightning, and kisses at you. I really enjoy the rhythm of this fight, even if it does become very formulaic. After defeating her, she turns into the coolest weapon that I hate the most to use. I mean, it's an electric guitar that can summon bats, and yet it's so hard to combo, and I completely gave up on it. God, I can only imagine if I wanted all the weapon breaking statues. There's these statues spread across the game that can only be broken with specific weapons when you reach a certain style rating, and they are so boring, especially when you don't know how to combo with the weapon. I only did a few of these, which means I handicapped my health since they hold health shards, or shards raises your max health, but I digress. Next boss is Beowulf, which is okay, completely inoffensive in every way. Just hit him from the back when you can and dodge his attacks, you know, like always. Geryon is a horse with a chariot that chases you in a corridor back and forth, and after that you fight it in an arena. The design of this boss is top notch, and it's one of the most memorable fights in the game for me. After beating it, you unlock the before mentioned Quicksilver style. Lady is interesting because she uses projectiles against you, and it's a narrative relevant fight, but other than that it's not really a fight I'm very fond of, especially because all you have to do to beat her is find her and stun lock her until she runs away, and then repeat until death. Doppelganger is probably the easiest fight in all the game. In fact, maybe even of all the games. Well, maybe not, because Devil May Cry 2 exists, I guess. All you have to do is open the things around the arena, which will light up the doppelganger and make it vulnerable to attacks. It's a puzzle fight kinda, so that's cool, but it's so easy it makes it way less enjoyable. Arkham is very frustrating and at the same time very impressive, and that is all because halfway through the fight Virgil joins you, and this has the handicap that you can't DT, but it sure is a nice spectacle. Besides, if you have a second controller laying around, you can have someone else take control of Virgil. Speaking of Virgil, we finally get to the last boss, which is him. You fight him more than once and it's always fun. I always enjoy the battles where you feel more on equal footing, and that's what this is. Even having his own DT, it's so much fun to go back and forth with what feels like an equal in ability. With a quick overview of the bosses done, let's do the same to the entire narrative. So long story short, Virgil wants to open the gates of hell, which Sparta, their dad, closed, using a priestess' blood and his own. Arkham tricks Dante, Virgil, and his daughter to all go to the entrance of it, where he uses all their blood to open it. Dante goes in and fights Arkham, which now has the power of Sparta, but he can't contain it, so it turns into a gross mess. Virgil shows up and gives a hand, ending with them victorious. The two brothers then fight, where Dante wins and Virgil falls into the hell portal. Dante finally picks the name of his shop and the game ends.
Wanna know the name? Devil May Cry.
If you kill 100 enemies on the credits though, you unlock the hidden ending with Virgil, but I was short one enemy so I didn't get to see it, I saw it online, oops. As I said before, I really enjoyed the story this time around, and it was good fun all the way through. The cutscenes are really good, being better directed and a lot better acted too. Also, I love how every level beginning cutscene has the number of the level hidden on it. The music is good and catchy, but I don't know, it just doesn't click with me a lot. I like it, but I don't love it. The environments though, I do like. I'm a bit butthurt from the repetition of certain places, but the ones that are here, I like a lot. I specifically enjoy the inside of the Leviathan and the cohesiveness of the main tower. Have to admit though, Devil May Cry 1 still has my favorite environments. The castle was so much more memorable than the tower, but hey, still pretty good nonetheless. Devil May Cry 3 is a phenomenal game with a lot of fun to be had, no doubt about it, but I can't help but think that it's a bit overrated. Don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun with it, its combat is super satisfying, the story and cutscenes are entertaining, and the entire game sweats charisma through its digital pores, but the second half of the game is repetitive and unnecessary. The music, although good, didn't really vibe with me, and Virgil was a complete disappointment. His moves are cool, but after seeing the beginning cutscene different when you unlock him, I was expecting them to make a bunch of new cutscenes. I quickly found out that was not true, and there was no new cutscenes, no anything, and I completely lost interest in beating the game all over again with him. Also, I am assuming you can play with Virgil in Bloody Palace, but I didn't beat the game with him, so I couldn't try it. Speaking of Bloody Palace though, it's here, it's fun, it does the same as just like in the second game. You beat up some enemies, you choose from 3 portals, each portal sends you to a specific little area, and you just keep going up and up and up until I don't know when, because I usually get bored or die. So yeah, it's really cool, it's not my thing. On the other hand though, if you're into that or into the combat style a lot, it's a really good place for you to train. Also, it's definitely the better rendition of it, because in the second one the enemies sucked so fucking bad, so this time they're definitely better. I might make some people mad with this, but that's life I guess. Devil May Cry 3 is great, but it's not one of my favorite games of all time or anything like that. It is my favorite of the trilogy. It has the best combat, best graphics, and best story of all 3 of them. Devil May Cry 1 still holds the mantle of my favorite level design, and Devil May Cry 2 is there. I'm just kidding, it is the weakest of them all, but I did at least enjoy the speed and nimbleness you have in that game, which in a nerfed way is also in Devil May Cry 3 via the trickster combat style. If you haven't played any of these games yet, you really should. I even think everyone should try the entire trilogy, but if you're just going to stick with one of them, DMC3 is the right one. I had a blast playing all 3 of them, some more than others, and it gave me a new perspective on the entire franchise. I'm even more excited to eventually cover Devil May Cry 4 and 5, especially 5. For now though, I will leave it at that and end my review of Devil May Cry 3, and with it, my entire review of the Devil May Cry PS2 trilogy. If this video felt even more all over the place than usual, it's because it was. A lot has happened, and in the making of this video, a long time passed between starting the game and finishing this video, so some things might be a bit muddy, a bit confused, but I tried my best. Regardless, I thank you if you watched this far, and I hope you stick around for more. Thank you and see you next time.